Good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Roman, and I'm a life coach. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and believe it or not, the state of Ohio certified me, licensed me, so I'm like legal. And so it's really an honor to be here tonight to kind of kick off, be the inaugural speaker for the new and improved Rust Belt Coffee. Right? This is new and improved, remodeled and everything. I kind of got lost over there at the main counter. But anyway, it's good to be here. How was Thanksgiving for everybody? Everybody have a good Thanksgiving? Okay? Yeah, enough turkey? Enough turkey? Enough, how many of you had enough of your family? Okay. Okay. Did you know that the night before Thanksgiving is the biggest drinking night of the year in the United States? What's up with that? Supposedly, yeah, but at least that's what it looks like, at least for most people. What's up with that, do you think? The biggest drinking night. My oldest daughter went to Miami University, and when she came home freshman year, she had just taken Psychology 101, and she knew it all. And she comes home on Thanksgiving break, that's the first time we saw her, and she says, "I know what's wrong with this family, you're a bunch of dysfunctional people." And of course, how do you respond to that? And I said, well, welcome to the group. You're part of it. You made us this way. So tonight, I'd like to talk about how to manage the holiday season without killing your family. And because how many of you got a family? Yeah, we all got one at least, maybe a couple. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that in the holiday season, and that starts about Thanksgiving time until maybe the middle of January. There's an upsurge in domestic violence in the United States. As I said, there's an upsurge in DUIs, and there's an upsurge in just generally being depressed and unhappy and sad. What's up with that? I thought this was the season of good cheer. So tonight I'd like to speak just a couple of minutes about managing what I call the playfield of the family emotions, and then give you a couple of ideas on how to make some specific plays in that field. I liken this to like a football game or a game which has a playing field that marks the boundaries. Once you're on the field, there's certain lines that you operate in. There's certain rules. There's a set of players. There's sometimes referees to kind of help things out, and there's a big score clock. And so I'd like us to think in terms of our family as a playing field for our emotions. And so that is the only playing field you have emotionally because you got it from your family of origin. You inherited a lot of things from mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles. So I'd like to just talk a few minutes about how you play on that field and what are some different plays that you can have in changing that. Now remember, when you start playing differently, you're going to cause a lot of grief and anguish, and guess what happens in your family when people don't feel good about you? What do? You'll hear about it, right? And so change is not going to be something that'll be very easy to do. Okay, I'd like to begin with a quote from Howard Gardner, who taught at Harvard University, taught in education, and he said this: "The less a person understands his own feelings, the more he will fall prey to them. The less a person understands the feelings, the responses, and the behaviors of others, the more likely he will interact inappropriately with them and therefore fail to secure his proper place in the world." What did you hear there? What do you think that's about? What's Dr. Gardner trying to say, do you think? Any idea? What's that? About listening. Okay. Anything else you heard Dr. Gardner say about?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Okay. Anything else?
Communicating clearly.
Okay, communicating clearly. Okay, these are all good ideas. Yes, he's trying to get at that. Paying attention to what's going on inside of you will help you pay attention to what's going on inside of others, and that you will be able to be at your optimum self. Okay, so tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about the playing field. I'd like to talk about the game, and then I'd like to talk about some specific moves that you can make that might be different in the way you engage your family time. And by the way, this has absolute applicability for everything. Think in terms of your businesses too, as you interact with business partners, okay? The first thing is that family. What's a family? What's a family? We all said we had one. What do we mean by that? What's your family? What's a family? What's that family look like? Well, technically what a family is, it's the number of people that cluster around an emotional nucleus. The cluster, really, kids and mom and dad. Or specifically, a kid and mom, because mom is the first big emotional connection that every child has, okay? Now, I don't know, how many of you got brothers and sisters? Okay, many of you got brothers and sisters, okay? Every kid in a family has a different set of parents. Believe that's true?
Oh, yeah.
Every kid in a family has a different set of parents because by the time you're born, circumstances have changed dramatically for your parents. By the time your siblings are born, circumstances have changed, and there's a new set of parents for every kid. I'm always amazed when people say, how can two kids come from the same family and be so different? That's why. Parenting is different. And those of you that got kids, anybody here got children at all? Okay, so think about how you're parenting your kids and how that's working. Yeah, how's that working for you, Chris? Exactly, okay. So I talk about the family, and then I'd like to talk about multi-generational transmission. How many of you act like your dad? How many of you guys act like your dad? Okay, yeah, right. How many of you guys swore that you'd never act like your dad? Okay, and we still are that same way. Well, the multi-generational process is basically the emotions that get carried down and passed down in our family from generation to generation. I had a very anxious grandmother on my one side, and guess what? My whole family is pretty anxious about certain kinds of things. I also want to talk about family togetherness. The holiday season is a great time for family togetherness. How many of you have ever felt pressure to show up for either Christmas dinner or Hanukkah dinner or a Kwanzaa dinner or just family dinner? Anybody feel pressure to show up? Yeah, it's always there. The idea is we just need to be one big happy family. You ever hear about that? We're always one big happy family. Well, the problem with that is that we get too close to somebody. What happens? We get too close. Stay away. You're getting too close. We begin to feel irritated and have some tension there. And every relationship has the possibility of having some tension. And the more sensitive I get, guess what? The more irritable I'm going to be. The more sensitive I am, the more irritable I'm going to be. And of course, when I'm irritated, guess what Bill does? He reacts. He reacts. Okay? So we're always more sensitive in our family than any other place. How many of you are anxious because somebody in your family is anxious? Anxiety is just plain contagious. I take on everybody else's anxiety with the idea that somehow or other I believe I can help them. I can solve it. I can fix it. Okay? And now anxiety is easily understood as that's my reaction to whatever might be threatening to me in a given moment. Now that could be real, but more often not, it's just my perception. It really isn't a saber-toothed tiger trying to bite me. Okay? And in our families, that stuff gets rolling around real quick. And so what happens then is I borrow and I lend myself to you to help you, and you help me. If I get anxious enough about something, I'm going to call Todd up and I'm going to say something to him in the hope that he'll say, "Don't worry, Bill, I'll take care of it for you." You ever been in that situation? I'll take care of it for you, or so you want somebody else to take care of it for you? We do it all the time. Todd gains a capacity to function better than I do, and I give my own stuff up, okay? And then I want to just talk a minute about triangles. How many of you have ever been involved in an emotional triangle? Here's what I mean by that. Todd and I are really good friends. He and I are mad at each other about something. I don't know what's bugging him. He doesn't know what's bugging me, but I'm going to call Chris over here, another good friend, and I'm going to say, what's up with Todd? I'll feel better because I've unloaded a little bit onto him, and then what I want you to do is I want you to call Todd, and I want you to say, "What's up with that? Roman's all upset about it."
Yeah, Roman just called me, and he's pretty ticked off at you, bro. Dude, you don't know what he did.
You see how this works, but do it all the time. And of course, now what he's going to do is he's going to talk over here about this thing going on here. Do you know what's going on between Todd and Bill? And We do it all the time. Now, is it impossible to stay out of them? It's really hard, but we can manage ourselves in every triangle. I just want to give you an idea. These are some of the part of the playing field that every family has. Okay, so how does all of this get played out? Well, it gets played out very predictably. There are rules for every family, and it governs how we operate within our family. And that emotional field is often marked by hypersensitive people. How many of you have got hypersensitive people in your family? How many of you are the hypersensitive person in your family? Okay? Okay, kind of watch out for so-and-so. He's in a bad mood, okay? Not just sensitive to one another, but sensitive to how everybody else interacts with everybody else. Here's a case in point. I have a great relationship with my Aunt V. My Aunt V is my mother's youngest sister. She's the only surviving sibling in my mom's large family, okay? And so I have a great relationship with Aunt V, but I also take into account the relationship and the interaction that my mom had with Aunt V throughout her life. I also take into account how my Aunt V related to her husband, my Uncle Bob. Then I also think about how her son Eric and her daughter Susan interact with her. All of this stuff comes as I try to interact with Aunt V. It's all informing me on how I should handle my Aunt V, because I certainly don't want to make her mad, because if I did, that would be bad news for me. Okay? It's very complicated, but we do it all the time. So here are some predictable patterns that we do on our playing field. Okay? One of those is that we monitor, interpret, and react to people. In other words, my instantaneous reactivity is attuned to triggers I get from people. My wife, Karen, gives me the look. The look. How many of you have a sibling or a spouse that gives you the look? What do I mean by the look?
I'm admitting to nothing.
You don't have to admit to anything. Okay. How many? You know what I'm talking about with the look? The look. Okay. There, she didn't say a word. She just gives me the look. Okay. There is an immediate emotional reaction on my part. I got an anxious reaction when she gives me the look. It's, now what in the hell did I do? Okay. Or I have a calm response, as in, oh, she's really glad to see me. Which one is it? Which one is it? Because how I choose, with the one I choose, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to react out of that. And if I react out of, now what are you upset about? Now what did I do? That's going to start a whole new ball game down that road. As opposed to, oh, I'm so glad you're glad to see me. That might take me somewhere else. You see, understand? You tracking with me on that? Okay, so we constantly monitor everybody else's behavior, particularly their sign language. We monitor, interpret, and we react. Okay? And an anxious family is a very different animal than a calm family. Okay? That's one thing that we do on our playing field. Okay? We monitor, interpret, and react. Okay? Here's the second thing that we do on our playing field, and that's we might have chronic tension. How many of you have a family that has chronic tension? Everybody's upset all the time. A tension occurs as that anxiety heightens up, and guess what? It gets passed around to other people. This can be like background music that we hear at the mall, but we really don't pay attention to. It's always running, that family tension. That's another thing that's on the playing field. Here's a third thing, anticipatory anxiety. How many of you walk on eggshells when you're with other people? Okay? That's what anticipatory anxiety is about. What happens when I'm worried about how you're going to respond, when I'm always kind of in eggshells around Chris, is that I don't have enough energy to attend to the things that are really important in my life. I can't really focus on what would help me grow to be a better person, to be more productive, because I'm constantly worried about what's going on between him and me. Okay? So I don't apply my energy to the basic tasks of life. Families do this all the time. What are some of the basic tasks of life? Well, one thing in a family is helping kids develop to maturity. That's one thing. And if you're constantly and chronically under tension, you don't address that. It never happens, and the kid's off on their own. And the second thing is that a family is not able to adapt to changes that happen throughout its life. How many of you have a family where you've had a lot of changes? I hope everybody would raise their hands because it happens. You know, things like births and deaths and graduations and moving away and somebody new coming into the system, like getting married or divorcing. These are all massive changes, and if we don't have the ability to adapt to those changes, what happens? What happens? You know, we stay pretty stuck in some tough places, okay? And then what happens is that we become very selective about the kind of information we take in. You know, and I favor a certain kind of information about Chris, and that's why I'll always make sure that I get that information because it will support my view of him, right? When we decide, you know, when we label somebody, we're going to find information that will continue to have that conclusion supported and fortified, okay? So everything then becomes measured in its terms of how it's going to impact me. Remember, it's all about me, right? I ain't much, but I'm all I ever think about. You know, one of the things that we can think about is that most of my problems in my life have come from my problem-solving techniques. Just work with that for a little while, okay? So here's the implications then of this chronic tension that's constantly working as the background music in so many families. There's an emotional memory that gets kicked in. The emotional memory, okay? And the look that my wife gives me, that's a memory. I remember how she's looked at me in the past and where that's gone. So the look has a memory, an emotional memory, okay? Here's a couple of troubling condition responses that we have when our emotional memory kicks in. The first one is this, is that we blame others. Any experience in blaming others? Have you ever been on the receiving end of being blamed? Okay? It's never me, it's always them. No. This family would be okay if it weren't for you, or ever since she married him. You understand? Okay, blaming others. That's one of the troubling responses we give. Another one is stonewalling. Stonewalling is, I don't want to talk about that anymore. Any experience with that? How productive is that in a conversation with somebody when they say, I don't want to talk to you anymore? You know, this is great for marriages. You know, just quit talking to each other, okay? And then the third thing is contempt. So these three things become, contempt is, it isn't that you did something bad, it's that you're just bad, period. Very destructive, okay? So all these things put an enormous strain on the family's ability then to have resources on how to just deal with life. Okay, so here are some suggested plays I have for you to think about during this holiday season. Okay, the first one is this. How many of you are going to see your family, be with your family during the holiday season, and you can just decide what the holiday season is for you? Okay, we're all going to be there. Okay, you know, we're going to personally do some traveling to where some of our kids are at, and then we've got family coming into our house and all that sort of thing. Okay, here's the first thing is. Like any good athlete, it's very important to have a pre-game workout. Before you start going there, begin to monitor your anticipatory anxiety. Here's some ideas. I think it would be helpful, I found it to be very helpful, that for 2 minutes every day, I would just take some time and think about breathing. Have you ever thought about breathing? Anybody ever think about breathing? Yeah, actually think about breathing, as in, Bill, breathe in. Bill, breathe out. Bill, breathe in. In, I'm breathing in. Out. Just do it for 2 minutes, a couple times a day. See what happens. Been a ton of research done with this, as dumb as it sounds. It says, you know what? Your heart rate decreases, your blood pressure decreases, and you begin to be better. And guess what? You don't need any special equipment to do this. You don't have to join the gym or get special clothes or anything. Okay, the second thing is I'd like you to think about practicing some self-compassion. Just be kind to yourself. This is a pre-game workout, okay? So mindful breathing, do a little bit of self-compassion, and the third thing is pay attention to your self-talk. What do you say to yourself? What do you say to yourself? And specifically, what do you think about when you don't have to think about anything? What just comes to your mind? And so I like to just think about, do you doubt yourself? as you talk to yourself? I'd like to recommend the Bob Newhart approach. Who all knows Bob? Anybody know Bob Newhart? Watching this kind of dates me now. The Bob Newhart show. He was.
So Nick at Night still.
Yeah, Nick at Night. Okay. Bob Newhart played a psychologist, and he would have his clients come in, and he'd tell them, they'll sit in the chair and all that, and he'd say, okay, now this is only going to cost you $5, and it's only going to take a minute here, and they get all excited, and they would say what their problem was, and he just said these words: stop doing that. Stop doing that. Okay? I'd just like to say the same thing. Your self-talk, be aware of what you say to yourself and stop doing it. Okay? This is a pregame workout now. This is before you even encounter your family. Okay? Just like that. The second thing is I would like you to think about keeping your perspective about whatever event you're going to attend, whether they're coming to your house or whether you're going to their house. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, okay? Have a realistic expectation for yourself and for others. Someone has said that every expectation is a resentment waiting to happen. Be realistic, okay? There's a reason why there are 12 days to Christmas. Spread it out, okay? That's the second idea. Keep perspective. Here's the third idea. Be positive about yourself and your capacity to manage and be resilient. Be positive about yourself and your ability to manage and be resilient. That's different than saying, I just survived. Move beyond just survival to being resilient, okay? If you're the kind of person that doesn't see the glass half full, that might be a family trait. You might have inherited that from grandma, okay? Here's the fourth idea. Once you've arrived, or once your guests have shown up, or whatever it is, practice what I call contact, not closeness. It's important to say hello to everyone there. You don't have to sit down, and you don't have to rehearse anything. Contact, not. You will be amazed at the miracles just that little idea right there can work. Contact, not closeness. Okay? Just say hello. Okay? Fifth idea, have in mind the hot topics that you don't want to talk about. What are the things that are certainly going to piss you off? Don't do it. Don't go there, okay? What are the no-goes that you want to make sure happen, okay? Now, this is the way you deal with that. Say somebody wants to talk about politics, okay? By the way, this presidential election we just had was the most disruptive in families in the United States since 1860. That's a lot of time, okay? Most disruptive, okay? We've got people that don't talk to each other anymore now, okay? That's a sad thing. So what are your no-go topics? Make sure. And here's what you say to somebody who wants to talk about that. I am not comfortable talking about that now. I statement. I am not comfortable talking about that now, okay? Why not? I am not comfortable talking about that right now. Why not? I get it? Rinse and repeat. Just stick to that. I'm not comfortable. Okay? That's enough. Because the more you talk, guess what happens? No, don't go there. Okay? Okay, have in mind the hot topics. Okay, here's the sixth idea. Pay attention to your body cues for anxiety. We all have a body, right? This is it, right here. This is it. Okay, what does your body say to you when you start getting anxious? Does your gut churn? Do you get tight-fisted? My hands get cold. Sometimes you might get sweaty. Pay attention to what your body's telling you because it tells you before your brain says you're anxious. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that, and then because of that, you're more readily available to have a plan of action. It's important to have a plan of action when you visit with people you might be anxious about. The first thing is, I call it, have a timed out. When that anxiety begins to get up, you know how you're going to react when your anxiety gets high? I know how I get real irritated. That's a time for me to say, I'm feeling really emotionally flooded right now. I need to step out of this and I'll be back in a half an hour. You'll be amazed at what that does. And I'll be back in half an hour. That's different than saying, I'm out of here. Big difference. Timed out means a beginning and an ending to your timed out, okay? When the coach calls a timeout, the guys usually don't head to the locker room, do they? They usually go back onto the field or the court and play. It's the same idea. So when you're feeling emotionally flooded, you can say, you know, I'm feeling really kind of uneasy right now. I need to step out of this, okay? Another idea to have is make sure you have an exit plan. That is, if it gets you need to leave, you need to leave. But make sure your car is on the street and not the driveway. Okay? By that I mean, don't get hedged in by somebody, okay? The other idea is have a scheduled visit. Okay, I'll come at 3:30 and I'm gonna leave at 5. This is just managing yourself is what you're doing, okay? And then you might need to have a friend close by, as in speed dial, okay? You might need to, hey, John, I need to get out of here. Come and get me, okay? Here's the 7th idea, and this is a really big one, very important. Monitor your food intake. Food is mood. If you fill yourself up with sugar and carbohydrates, you're not going to feel good, okay? And along with food comes booze. Monitor your alcohol intake. The holiday season is notorious for all that Christmas cheer, and it takes you bad places. Now, please don't hear me say, yeah, be teetotal, and I'm not. But be careful about your alcohol consumption because it can lead to some tough places, okay? Better to just stick to water, right? Just stick to water, okay? Here's another idea, and the 8th play you can make. Practice generosity. That is, give to others. Give to others in your family compliments instead of criticisms. Give something to the less fortunate that you might know. They don't have to be in your family. You will be amazed at what happens if you start working with other people just for an afternoon. Okay? Cherry Street Mission is a good place to do something like that, okay? And then the last thing I want to say is it's important to cultivate a sense of humor in all this. I would encourage you to go on Google, and they've got a wonderful thing called Dysfunctional Family Bingo. You know, that you can print off and not sarcastically, just pass this out at the dinner table or just give it to people. Here's things like, snarky comment about the green beans is not actually about the green beans. You can check that off. Overly racist rant about Obamacare, you can check that off. Curse word said in front of a kid, you can check that off. In other words, adult assigned to the kid table as punishment. You know. Anyway, have a sense of humor. Have a sense of humor. Now, what I'm really encouraging you to do is standing up for yourself without making a big deal about it. And it's really difficult to do in your family. Okay? Now, I do have a little handout that I just give you. It's called Differentiating from Your Family of Origin. And you're welcome to have it. It's about 4 ideas about working on these plays that I just presented. Okay? Good to be here. Thanks, everybody.